Today what I'm going to discuss is the types of commercial properties. But sometimes when I'm talking to somebody, I'll tell them over the phone that's a B property or C property, and then I realize later on in the conversation they have no idea what I'm talking about on the types of properties. So I thought I'd do a real quick video on explaining the types of properties, especially commercial properties. I'm not going to talk about residential today, unless you're considering an apartment building as residential. I usually consider that commercial. Okay, we have basically four different types of buildings, and I'm going to point them out right now to you. And we have type A buildings. These are the kind you see in Beverly Hills that are very nice, very expensive, all kept up. You don't make much money on these type of properties, but they are good to own. On a type A property, those are usually built in the last 10 years. Okay, because they're almost brand new. And the second thing is they usually have white collar workers. They're usually more expensive. The buildings are definitely more expensive, and the rents inside the buildings are more expensive. And so when people leave their type A buildings, they usually go to buy a house. Not too many stay renters. They usually go to buy. Now we have type B properties. They're not as nice. They've been built in the last 20 years. Not 10, but the last 20 years. They usually need a little bit more work, but they're still in great shape. Okay. What type of tenants do the B properties have? Well, they'll have both white-collar tenants and blue-collar tenants. And they're also, these type of tenants are the ones that will sometimes go buy a house. If they choose not to buy a house, they're usually long-term tenants. They stay there for quite a while. Okay, down here is type C properties. These are a little more fix-up type properties. These are usually built in the last 30 years. That's why there's more work that needs to be done. Okay, also you can start seeing Section 8 tenants. What are Section 8 tenants for people who don't know? Section 8 is a program with the government where they will pay most of your rent, probably like 90%. You only have to come up with about 10% of it. Of course, you have to qualify for it. Both the property has to qualify and the tenant has to qualify. And what I mean by the property having to qualify is for Section 8 tenants, you have to keep it fixed up. And they go out there and they check it out every year to make sure it is fixed up. Otherwise, you'll lose your Section 8 income. And a lot of people like that because it's guaranteed income from the government. Okay. Also, tenants, if they leave the building, they will not leave the building usually if they're treated correctly. Now, remember, in the apartment building business, you have to give them a good place to live, and that is in exchange for the rent that they give you. Okay. They usually do not buy. So a lot of them will stay there for a long time, which is great if you can get a tenant for 20, 30 years. They'll pay off your entire mortgage for you. The lowest type of property on the totem pole is what we call a D property. Now these are the properties that you will find in the ghetto. Okay, they're usually built 40 years or more. Maybe when they built them 40 years ago, it was a nice property. But 40 years goes by, it changes. The demographics of the areas change. Okay? And that's why I put down here, it's usually in a war zone now. Probably wasn't a war zone when they built it, but it is a war zone now. Okay? Also, some of the examples, you have bars on the windows. You might have people in the neighborhood selling drugs, maybe even out of your building. And it has some functional obsolescence. That's the part that needs to be fixed up. Now, me personally, I like the type B and the type C properties. Okay, because a type B property, you can go in there, try to make it a type A. Or a C type property, you can go in there and try to make it a B. And you pick up, you make more money doing that because, and I'm going to get into the cap rates here in a second, you can change the cap rates, not only the income, by raising rents or decreasing expenses, but you can also change it from a C to a B building, and that will also increase your income. Now, over here, I've written the cap rates. Now, I'm not going to go into a dissertation today on cap rates because I've already done one of those. But real quickly, if you have a type A property, which is the nicest property, you should be getting somewhere around a 7%, excuse me, maybe even a little bit less, maybe a 6, maybe even a 5, okay? Over here on a B property, you should be getting 8 to 9% on a cap rate, okay? On a C property, you should be getting 10 to 11, And on a D property, you should get 12 or plus. And some of them you go up to 19, some 20. Those are really in really bad areas. Okay, but you got to remember, the higher the cap rate, the lower the value of the property. So therefore you can see with a 12 plus up here, it's going to be worth a lot less than a Beverly Hills property over here at 7. And that's actually, if I use Beverly Hills as an example, that's a little high. They're about 4.5 in Beverly Hills. But you also have no cash flow in Beverly Hills, where I can go to South Central and get tons of cash flow because they're mostly D's and a few C's. All right, today that's our examples of the type of properties that are out there, commercial properties. That's what we're dealing with now. So again, you got the A, B, C, and D properties. So pick out the one you want and go for it. Now, if you would like more information, you can go to my youtube.com at #Floydloans. If you go there, make sure you hit the subscribe button and feel free to share it with anybody also. You also can go to my Facebook, which is Floyd Loans, my Twitter, which is @Floydloans, or Floyd@WoodrumFinancial.com.